Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be talking about 10 books that I desperately want to reread. Kind of all for different reasons, but I have this stack of books beside me and we're going to talk about each and every one of them and why I want to reread them. Now, the real question is when I will be able to reread these books, because as you guys know, I'm currently on a TBR takedown project. We are very successfully reading down my gigantic TBR, but maybe when we finally get to my physical TBR goal of like reading them down to 35 books, maybe it'll be the time to get into some of my reread list. But let's talk about these 10 books that I really just want to reread. Okay, the first book is none other than The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is definitely not new information, but I absolutely love V.E. Schwab. She is one of my favorite authors ever, and this is actually the first book I ever read from her. I think it was around, I want to say it was like 2021 or 2022. I can't actually remember what year I read this. I read it like when it came out. Maybe I can just open the book and check. Oh, this was published in 2020. Was it that long ago that I read this? Maybe it was. Genuinely, I can't remember. Maybe it was like 2021 that I read it. It was a very long time ago. It was my first V.E. Schwab. I remember reading this book. I think I read it like in that time where I was like getting back into reading again as an adult. And I had been reading a lot of Colleen Hoover, as many of us were in that time. But when I opened this book and started reading it, I was like, oh, it kind of like woke something up from inside of me, like brought this like desire for fantasy and just like long spanning stories like this again. I feel like it finally brought back that feeling of like when I loved reading, like what I loved about reading so much as a kid. This evoked all of that within me. And yeah, I was just reading it and I was like, oh, this is a good book. I just had the feeling that this book was like bigger than me. Like I was reading a lot of romances and thrillers at the time and like they were fun and all that, but nothing really like stirred me up, you know, like that deep. Nothing reached so deep into my soul. And when I read this one, everything changed. It definitely got me back into that like reading frenzy. But the sad thing is, I feel like I have read so many books since I read this, and there are so many plot points that have left my mind completely, because I will recommend this book to so many people and you know they'll try and talk to me about it and they'll be like, oh, I loved this part, like oh my gosh, like this just happened, look at me reading updates, you know, like a good friend does. But then when I get these reading updates, I just think to myself, I'm like, I can't remember that happening. And so I feel like all of these details have left my mind and I need to get them back into my head. And so for that reason, I definitely really want to reread this because I loved it and I need those details back. I'm so sad that they have slipped my mind and just faded over the years, but I definitely want all of those memories back. So this is definitely top, like very high on my reread list. The second book I desperately want to reread is, you guys are gonna be so annoyed at me that I'm bringing this book up again, but A Song to Drown Rivers by Liang. Of course, this book was basically my entire personality of 2024. I'm just gonna accept it at this point. I know I have raved about this book so many times. You probably do not need to hear my spiel on this one again. But this book just, oh, it brought back yearning. If you have been reading so many romances or even like books in general, because this doesn't read as like a romance. It is categorized as a historical fantasy romance. It's very light on the fantasy. It definitely reads more of like a historical romance to me, but I have been missing real yearning, true yearning. I feel like it does not exist anymore. Like out of like 99% of the books I read, 1% of them will have yearning, and this brought it back. I have recommended this book to so many people, like, you know, you guys know that, but also like not only online, but in person as well. And everyone like in person that I have recommended this book to has absolutely loved it. The writing is beautiful. The story is beautiful. The yearning is absolutely wonderful. And it's also one of those books that has a very tragically beautiful ending that will make you cry, but like you'll love the ride, you know? So it might leave you feeling sad, but like sometimes feeling those emotions are a good thing. And if you guys know me, you know that I love books that make me cry. This one did indeed make me sob at the very end, and I just want to feel these feelings again. I think similar to Addie LaRue, like obviously I read this a lot more recently than I read Addie LaRue, but I just want to get all of those details like fresh and clear back into my head, because again, like a lot of people talk to me about this book because I've recommended it to them, and I want to experience it again and have all of those memories fresh. It's also, I think, severely underrated. Not enough people have read this book. I think on Goodreads, I don't remember the exact number, but it has like a criminally low amount of ratings, and it needs more. This is Anne Liang's best book, and you need to read it. And I also need to reread it. Next up is another one of my favorite books that I just desperately, I just want to experience these feelings again. And I think also we're getting into the season where this book would be like perfect to read in. And this one's a book that I think everyone has read or at least has heard of. Happy Place by Emily Henry. No, this wasn't my first Emily Henry. I think my first Emily Henry was Book Lovers, and I really, really loved that. I then read Beach Read, and I was like, this is good too. I think I then read People We Meet on Vacation Next. Wasn't like I liked it, but it was probably, it was the weakest for me in terms of Emily Henry. And then I picked this up, and it just changed everything for me. This, to this day, is still my favorite Emily Henry book. I think it just like ties together romance with general fiction, like women's fiction, so well. I think the part of this book that resonated with me the most is all the stuff to do with adult friendships. I think just like all the stuff that was happening within this friend group hit me so deep in the soul. Like I could relate to so much of it. I think Emily Henry portrayed that side of being an adult very well. Like it mixed summer vacation home vibes very well with like, I don't know, a fun romance, obviously. And then yeah, we get this story with these friendships and like how with adult friendships, sometimes you don't have as much time to dedicate to like maintaining these like really, really close adult friendships. And sometimes they start to fade. Sometimes you naturally start to go in different directions, but like, you always know, like in the end, those friends are going to be there for you when you need. And it was just so beautiful. It was just so beautiful. But whoa, what happened to this? Why is it sliding out of the dust cover? Let's get that back in. But with this book, I loved it so much, but I also I don't really remember the details of it. Again, because I read like 150 books a year. Obviously books that I've read like years and years and years ago are not going to be as clear in my mind, so I just want to remember. Also actually curious to see if this truly is my favorite Emily Henry book, because like in my heart, I'm like, this is my favorite Emily Henry book. But in my head, in my mind, I'm like, I feel like my reading taste has changed a lot, even in like the past year or so. I think it would just be really interesting rereading this and seeing, if it does compare to like Funny Story or Great Big Beautiful Life that she wrote more recently. I don't know, I just want to reread this. Also, like, how summary is this book? We're getting into, as I mentioned, the perfect season to read this, and I just want to experience this again. And the fourth book that I want to reread is a fantasy. It's another very popular one that everyone's probably read or heard of, and it's actually A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. When I first read this book, I've only read it once, but when I read this book, it was not my favorite. It did not hit. I loved the original 3 books in this series, like ACOTAR, ACOMOF, ACOWAR. I loved them so much that I had really high expectations for this one, obviously, because I binge read this entire series. I was one of those people that just like read the entire ACOTAR series in, how long did it take me? I think it took me like 2 weeks to read the entire series, and I was on this high from the first 3 books, and then the wintry book, Frost and Starlight. That one I found was like, it was fine. It wasn't anything like mind-blowing, obviously. I think everyone kind of knows that, but it was like just like a nice break, I think. Like, especially when you're reading the series like front to back all in a row. That little winter holiday book actually felt really nice after ACOWAR. Just being able to spend time with these characters without all this stress and just seeing them celebrate a holiday. And also that little winter book was the first one where we got multi-POV and we're able to see into some of the other characters' minds, which I really, really enjoyed as well. So I know the little blue book gets a lot of criticism, and I agree. It's definitely not the best book in the series whatsoever, but I think it was kind of needed if you're one to read the entire series front to back. But this one disappointed me. And before you come after me, it's not because I hate Nesta. I actually do really like her growth in this book, and I like a lot of the plot in this book. I was not a Nesta fan at the beginning of this book, but by the end of it, I definitely understood her character more. She's definitely not the character that I can relate to the most in this universe, but I definitely like appreciated her character growth and her journey, and I really actually loved the female friendships in this book. I think that was wonderfully done. What I didn't love about this book was the romance. So first of all, this book was the most spicy out of the entire ACOTAR series, and like I don't mind if a book is a little bit spicy, but I just think with this one in particular, the spice subtracted from the plot for me. I think there was just too much emphasis on it. I think it also just made, like, just the way the spice was happening, it made the romance feel like it was way more physical lust first, and we didn't get a lot of emotional connection, and I was just really disappointed in how it happened. I think, again, like, a lot of it was based on just pure lust and physical attraction, and I'm just never the biggest fan of that. I wanted more emotions. I wanted more of, like, a mental bond, and we did not get that, and I did not like Cassian as like a male main character. But the reason I want to reread this book, okay, is because I want to, like, now that I can go into it expecting that there's going to be a lot of spice, expecting that I'm not going to love the romance, I want to reread it for like all of the other parts of the plot, like the female friendships, Nesta's personal healing and growth, and I want to reread it with that in my focus without being distracted at all the romance that I wasn't loving, because I feel like I was just so jaded while reading this. Like, I just disliked the romance so much that my brain couldn't focus on the other parts of the plot that, you know, like it probably deserved more of my attention, but it couldn't get my attention because I was just having like an inner crisis. I don't know. I couldn't get over myself. I want to reread it for that reason, and I won't be rereading this right away because I want to time rereading this for whenever the next ACOTAR book comes out. Once they announce the next book, I definitely want to reread this one, and I think I will reread the little holiday novella as well, just to have everything fresh in my mind for whenever the next book comes. So just like a few reasons why I want to reread this one, even though I didn't particularly like love it so much. Okay, we are on our 5th book that I want to reread, and that is actually The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I think the reason is kind of obvious as to why I want to reread this. I think a lot of people have actually been rereading this entire trilogy recently because of the release of Sunrise on the Reaping. A lot of us obviously read that book right on release, and a lot of us wanted to just dive back into the universe, which, like, I get it. I want to do it too. I haven't had time to do it, but I recently went to my parents' house. I found all of my old Hunger Games books. I found the entire trilogy in my childhood bedroom, and I brought them here. I desperately want to reread these so badly. I think I especially want to read Catching Fire just because I know, like, even while I was reading Sunrise on the Reaping, I was like, oh my god, all the connections to Catching Fire are crazy. Like, there's so many of them, and I definitely want to reread Catching Fire first and foremost, but like I'll do it in the right order, you know, when the time does come around to reread these, but it's just something I want to do. I also just think with the original trilogy, I have rewatched the movies over and over and over and over again throughout the years, but I haven't read these original books since my like teenage years, and I know the movies are quite well adapted, like they didn't change that much, but obviously, you know, there's always more that's going to be included in the books, and there's definitely parts that were left out or like minor things that were changed, and so I just want to have a more fresh memory of this original trilogy in book form so I can get all those details back. And the next one that I want to reread is actually also like in an entire series, which again, this is why I'm like, I don't know when I'll have time to reread these, but these are all definitely books that have been on the back of my mind, like, ooh, I just really want to get back to those. And these are all also a series of books that I have, you know, gotten from my childhood bedroom and brought back here, but it's The Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. So the funny thing is, while I was going through my childhood bedroom, I was definitely on the lookout for The Hunger Games particular, but I saw these ones and I was like, oh yeah, loved those books. I remember reading them, like obviously I didn't read them like that young because these are adult. So I think I read them like in my early 20s maybe. And I remember loving them, absolutely loving them. I was kind of reading them concurrently while watching the series as the TV show was coming out. And I really loved the experience. But again, it's something that I don't remember a lot of details about. And I realized I thought I had read this entire series like up to date. We all know The Winds of Winters it's not coming. Winter is not coming. And I think we have all accepted that. But I really thought that I had read all the books like up to date. But when I found these books in my childhood bedroom, I realized I only had the first 4 and I don't actually have A Dance with Dragons. I realized I didn't have the 5th book. And I think the reason I never read it is because like maybe either the book came out after I had read the original 4 and I just like didn't know, like I didn't hear about it, I was not in the know, or maybe I gave up because I knew the next book wasn't out yet or like was never gonna come out. I don't know what happened, but either way, I don't have the 5th book, which means I never read the 5th book, and I feel like maybe it'd be fun to reread this entire series and then read the 5th book and then be left on the same cliffhanger that everyone else in the world has been left on. I'm kind of like entertaining the idea right now. I don't know if I'm fully convinced just because I'm like, do I want to spend more time investing into a series that will never be complete? That might just drive me up a wall. I don't know. But I do just remember really, really loving these books, and there is a part of me that's like, I should read A Dance with Dragons, but I think to do so, I would probably need to reread these because, again, it's been so long. There are so many things that I, have forgotten and definitely need a refresher on, so that would be quite a big endeavor, I think, rereading this entire series, but it's something I'm thinking about. For sure. Next up, I have talked about wanting to reread this one a few times on my channel, so you may know what this next one is going to be, but that is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I really don't like the covers I have, you guys. I have this style of cover for this and Crooked Kingdom, which, at least they're both matching, but I don't know why I got these editions. Like, this does not suit the books at all, and it doesn't suit the Grishaverse at all. It doesn't fit in with the rest of my universe on my shelf, but that is, that's another problem that we're not going to be talking about today. But I really want to reread this duology because I read the Grishaverse in the wrong order, and I blame everyone who told me the Shadow and Bone series was not worth reading. I blame you. If you told me that, I blame you. Because I just picked up Six of Crows first. Everyone was telling me to do it. Everyone was like, Shadow and Bone is not good. You just, you're better off just reading Six of Crows. And I liked Six of Crows. I did really like this duology. It is still one of my favorites, I would say. But I just think I didn't get the full experience because as I was reading this duology, I kept thinking to myself, I feel like there's something missing. I feel like I'm not getting the whole picture of like what is going on. And the reason for that is because I did not get the world building and like the backstory and the lore that we get in Shadow and Bone, because Shadow and Bone is the first trilogy in this universe, and chronologically it also happens first. Six of Crows comes second and King of Scars comes third. And I just think like while I was reading this, like I thought it was a fun heist book, and I liked the things that were going on. I liked the characters, but I just feel like my view on the world was so limited, and I didn't really ever get like world building. Like true world building, I feel like was not really included in this book very much, and I was desperately missing that while reading this book. After finishing this duology, I actually did end up picking the Shadow and Bone trilogy up, and I finally got that world building, and I was like, oh, and all the things started clicking into place, and I started regretting my decision to read this one first. I want to go back to this duology and just see like how much more I appreciate it. This next one is a little bit of an outlier in this crowd. I don't think I've talked about this book a lot on this channel. Maybe I've mentioned it a little bit more recently because it's like as I rearranged my bookshelves, it kind of came back up to the center of my attention. That is Pachinko by Jin Lee. This was, I think it was like my first kind of long spanning family generational story that I read, and I feel like this book changed my chemistry. What is that saying? My brain chemistry? I think this book changed my brain chemistry truly, because I had never really read a story like this that this one spans over 3 generations of families, and it just gave you such a deep look into like the experiences of all the members of this family. And it also does give you a lot of information about the history of Korea and Japan. This book starts in the early 1900s, and yeah, it just spans over 3 generations of this family. It's beautifully written. It made me feel so many things. There was a part in this book that made me cry, and I want to reread it. I want to experience this again. And it's also one of those books, like, I have now since read a lot more books that are maybe similar to this, whether it's a similar genre or like follows kind of the same real world events. Like, I've read some more historical fictions. I want to see like how I feel about this book now after reading like more in this genre. I'm just really curious. There is also a TV adaptation on this book. There are 2 seasons out so far, both on Apple TV, and I did watch the first season when it came out. I never watched the second season for some reason, but I feel like it'd be fun to reread this book and then like go on to the second season. So that's Pachinko by Jin Lee. And the 9th book I want to reread is actually a book that I've read quite recently, so it'll probably be a little while till I jump back into this one again, but it is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read this like a couple months ago, absolutely loved it. I want to read Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern as well, because I've also heard really good things about that one. And obviously I really loved Erin Morgenstern's writing in this book. It was so beautiful, atmospheric, very mysterious, but it kept you like captivated the entire way through. But while I was reading this book, it's one of those books that like, it makes you very confused the entire way through. It's one of those books where like while you're reading it, you're like, what the heck is actually going on? Like, you never get a real like full clear picture of what's going on. It's also one of those timelines that like jumps back and forth a lot and leaves you in mystery. And so I think like literally like when I finished this book, I immediately wanted to reread it, and I didn't because I had more books to read on my TBR, but I wanted to immediately reread it because I wanted to see like if I reread it, if I could see more like little foreshadowing bits or like little bits that would help me piece together like what was going on. And I feel like it's one of those books that if you reread, like you would just get so many more little hints and clues and details. And honestly, just for that reason, I want to reread this book. It's definitely much too soon, again, as I mentioned, because I just read it a few months ago. I literally read it in this calendar year, but I think maybe next year, maybe like around the winter months, I don't know, I feel like it'd be fun to pick this one up again. And the last book on my list, but definitely not the least, is another very popular one. It is actually The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I just read Atmosphere by her. It made me sob like a baby. Atmosphere by her really just caught me off guard in how hard it hit me. And I think like whenever we read a new book by an author we love, we always kind of like in our minds, or even like just talking with our friends, we always talk about ranking all of their books. Like, oh, like you just read Atmosphere, where does that one rank in your TJR rankings? And my current ranking is probably Atmosphere and maybe Daisy Jones tied at the top, and then The 7 Husbands next. And then I've read like all of her backlist, I think, except one book, but I feel like all of her other books are kind of like, they're interchangeable, not interchangeable, but like in terms of ranking, like I could be in a different mood every single day and change the rest of the ranking, but those are like my definitive top 3. But I feel like at the same time I read this, and I also read Daisy Jones quite a few years ago, so I really want to reread this one and Daisy Jones actually, just to get like, I don't know, an actual clear picture of like my TJR ranking with my reading taste today, and also just to read some more TJR, you know, reread some of her books. And so that's why I want to reread that one. That being said, that is my entire list. 10 books I desperately want to reread, and I just need more hours in the day so I can get through more of my TBR, and so I can revisit some of these books that I loved and I want to experience again. But that being said, I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what book or books that you desperately want to reread, and let me know why. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!